Good day, everyone. Welcome to our lesson, Local and Global Communication with Multicultural Settings. Okay, so we have here the intercultural communication. Okay, so intercultural communication, according to science, each person is genetically unique, except for identical twins. Each person has unique genetic composition. This uniqueness becomes even more heightened because of individual experiences. Women's or humans are formed by forces other than genetics. Family backgrounds, religious affiliations, educational achievements, social-cultural forces, economic conditions, emotional states, and other factors shape human identities. Because of this, no two people can ever be exactly the same. Okay, so this situation, the diversity of people and cultures impact communication. People interacting with those coming from unfamiliar cultures may have difficulties in communication. Most people tend to conclude the miscommunication result from speakers' lack of proficiency in language. Okay. So what is not realized is the fact that even with excellent language skills, people may still experience miscommunication. Okay. So we have here for communicating across cultures. Okay, so this is by Carol Kenzie Goman, 2011. Okay, so communicating across cultures is challenging. Each culture has set rules that its members take for granted. Few of us are aware of our own cultural biases or cultural biases because cultural imprinting is begun at a very early age. And while some of culture's knowledge, rules, and beliefs, values, phobias, and anxieties are taught implicitly, most of the information is absorbed subconsciously. The challenge the challenge for multinational communication has never been greater. Worldwide business organizations have discovered that intercultural communication is a subject of importance, not just because of increasing globalization, but also because their domestic workforce is growing more and more diverse ethnically and culturally. We are all individuals, and no people belonging to the same culture are guaranteed to respond in exactly the same way. However, generalizations are valid to the extent that they provide clues on what you'll most likely encounter when dealing with members of particular culture. Okay, so we have here again the high context versus the low context. Okay, all international communication is influenced by cultural differences. Even the choice of communication medium can have cultural overtones. The determining factors may not be the degree of industrialization, but rather whether the country falls into the high context or low context culture. Okay, high context cultures. We have here the Mediterranean, Slav, Central Europe, Latin America, Africa, Arab, Asian, American, Indian, leave much of the message unspecified to be understood through context, nonverbal cues, and between the lines interpretation of what is actually said. Okay, so by contrast, we have the low context cultures. Most Germanic and English-speaking countries expect messages to be explicit and specific. Okay, so we have here for the countries which is for the high context and the low context. Okay, so so we have here the countries. Next, we have here for the sequential versus synchronic. Okay, so some cultures think of time sequentially, okay, as a linear commodity to spend or save or waste. Okay, so other cultures view time synchronically as the constant flow to be experienced in the moment and as force that cannot be contained or controlled. Okay, so in sequential culture, like North America, English, German, Swedish, and Dutch, business people give full attention to one agenda item after another. Okay, so we have here for the sequential, which is they do things one at the time on planned schedule. Next, we have here the synchronic cultures, okay? So including South America, Southern Europe, and Asia, the flow of time is viewed as a sort of circle, okay? So with the past, the present, and future all interrelated. This viewpoint influence how organization in those cultures approach deadlines, okay? So strategic thinking, investment, developing talents from within, and the concept of long-term planning. Okay, so we have here for the synchronic culture, we have they do several things at once. Okay, so we have the similarities of the two. For the sequential, they do things one at a time on planned schedule. What about the synchronic? They do several things at once. Okay, so that is sequential and synchronic culture. Okay, so orientation to the past, present, and future is another aspect of time in which cultures differ. Americans believe that the individual can influence the future by personal effort. But since there are too many variables in the distant future, we favor a short-term view, synchronistic cultures. Context is to understand the present and prefer to for the future. Any important relationship is a durable bond that goes back and forward in time and is often viewed as grossly disloyal not to favor friends and relatives in the business dealing. Okay, so we have here for the affective versus neutral. Okay, so for the affective versus neutral in international business practices, reason and emotion both play a role. Okay, so which of these dominates depends upon whether we are affective. Okay, so we have readily showing emotions. If we are affective, are emotional neutral in our approach. Okay, so members of neutral cultures do not telegraph their feelings, but keep them carefully controlled and subdued. In cultures with high affect, people show their feelings plainly by laughing, by smiling, grimacing, scolding, and sometimes crying, shouting, or walking out of the room. Okay, so we have here also for the affective versus a neutral. Okay, so in affective, they are showing emotions is good. Okay, so lots of gesticulation, affectionate relationship. Okay, so we have here for the neutral, inscrutable. Okay, demonstration of emotions is considered impolite and silly. Okay. So this doesn't mean that people in neutral cultures are cold or unfeeling. But in the course of normal business activities, neutral cultures are more careful to monitor the amount of emotions they display. Emotional reactions were found to be the least acceptable in Japan, Indonesia, the UK, Norway, and the Netherlands, and most acceptable in Italy, France, the US, and Singapore. Okay, so the reason and emotion are part of all human communication. When expressing ourselves, we look to others for confirmation of our ideas and feelings. If our approach is highly emotional, we are seeking a different emotional response. I feel the same way. Okay, so if our approach is highly neutral, we want an indirect response. I agree with your thoughts on this. Okay, so it's easy for people from neutral cultures to sympathize with the Dutch manager and his frustration over trying to reason with that excitable Italian. After all, an idea either works or it doesn't work, and the way to test the validity of an idea is through trial and observation. That just makes sense that doesn't it? Okay. So, well, not necessarily to the Italian who felt the issue was deeply personal and who viewed any rational argument as totally irrelevant. Okay, so it comes to communication. What prefers and correct in one culture may be ineffective or even offensive in another. In reality, no culture is right or wrong, better or worse. Just remember, or just different. Okay, so in today's global business community, there are no single best approach to communicating with one another. The key to cross-cultural success is to develop an understanding of and a deep respect for the differences. Okay, okay, so thank you so much for listening. Keep safe and God bless.